Hello everyone, this is teacher Linda G. Today we're trying something a little bit different. I'm going to be giving you a short lesson on English idioms. Now you're going to ask yourself, what is an idiom? Well, an idiom is a combination of words that has a meaning that's different from the meanings of the individual words. Like in this example, it says, don't worry, driving out of to your house is a piece of cake. Well, it's not really a piece of cake, is it? Of course not. So idioms can sometimes have a literal meaning in one situation, and sometimes it can have a figurative meaning or an idiomatic meaning in another situation. It's a phrase that doesn't always follow the normal rules of meaning and grammar. I'm going to be giving some different examples. Let's start with looking at some common business idioms. You might have heard some of these in your work environment, especially if you work in a international work environment. The first one is back to square one. So what does back to square one mean? Well, it means to start something over again because a previous attempt has failed. And here's an example. To make this software finally work, we have to go back to square one. You might have had to go back to square one when you've failed at a certain project, for example, or perhaps you might have forgotten to save a document and your computer crashed and now you have to go back to square one. Not always fun. Another example is by the book. By the book is another very common business idiom, and it means to do things exactly according to the rules or according to the law. And for example, we told our auditors that we do everything by the book. Sometimes in a work environment, everything is done by the book, but oftentimes it's not always done by the book. Sometimes a work environment doesn't always follow the rules or the procedures, so they don't always go by the book. Here's another example. Get down to business. Stop making small talk and let's start talking about the serious business topic is what get down to business means. I'll give you an example. Now that everyone's here, let's get down to business and start with the presentation. So let's get down to business and continue my presentation. Here's another example. Something might be up in the air. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means that something is undecided or it's uncertain. So I might tell you that our plans are up in the air right now. In other words, we haven't decided quite yet what we'll be doing on our vacation. Things are up in the air. Let's move on to some other expressions or other common idioms related to getting fired or losing your job. I'm afraid we had to let Jim go. You might hear that. We have to let you go. We just don't have the budget. So if we have to let you go, it means we have to lay you off. You will lose your job. You will no longer be working there in the next little while. Here's another sentence. Due to the bad economy, lots of people are about to receive their pink slips, even though it's nearly Christmas. Receive their pink slips. Now, many, many years ago, people would actually receive a pink piece of paper that tells them they are now laid off. That doesn't exist anymore, but the expression still is around. So if you hear the expression, I've just received my pink slip, or we're going to get our pink slips, it means there's going to be a layoff. Another example, time to cancel that vacation to the beach. I just got my walking papers. I just got my walking papers. It might mean, well, I just got fired or I just got laid off. And finally, this last example. That report was due 2 days ago. If it isn't on my desk in the next half hour, then heads are going to roll. uh-oh, somebody is really upset, and I think it's the manager. So the manager is extremely mad, extremely upset, and he's going to express this anger or express this frustration in different ways. Definitely, your head is not going to roll. It's an expression that means he's very upset, and who knows, you might even lose your job. Okay, let's look at some common health idioms. Now, in the English language, there are many, many, many idioms, and there are probably idioms for every situation. Let's take a look at the common health idioms. These are just four of many different health idioms. Alive and kicking. Well, to be healthy and to be well means you're alive and kicking. Here's an example. My aunt is 90 years old and she is very much alive and kicking. It means she's still well. She's still healthy. There's a great picture here that shows you what a 90-year-old might look like when they're alive and kicking. To be fit as a fiddle is another way of saying I'm healthy and I'm physically fit. My grandfather is 90 years old, but he's as fit as a fiddle. My grandfather is healthy, he's physically well, he's physically fit. Here's another example. As pale as a ghost means you're extremely pale. Your face is very white. You might even look unhealthy and you might even look sick. So here's our example. My grandfather, was as pale as a ghost when he entered the hospital. So your grandfather was very pale. His face was white, was as white as a ghost, was as pale as a ghost. And finally, our last health idiom. Break out in a cold sweat. To perspire from fever or anxiety. And I could give you this example. When I have to give a speech, I usually break out in a cold sweat. What does this mean? Well, it means when I give a speech, I usually get so anxious that I might perspire. I might have some water on my forehead. I'm breaking out in a cold sweat. Let's look at just a few more. These are common travel idioms. The first one is asleep at the wheel. Now, you certainly don't want to be asleep at the wheel. So this expression doesn't necessarily mean that you're falling asleep at the wheel. It means that someone is not doing their job very well, or they're not taking their responsibilities very carefully. You might say, my new colleague seems to be asleep at the wheel. In other words, my new colleague isn't doing his job very well, or my new colleague isn't taking his responsibilities very seriously. Now, someone might be a backseat driver. What does that mean? Well, it's an annoying person who's fond of giving advice to the person performing the task or doing something, especially when the advice could be wrong or unwelcomed. And oftentimes this could happen when you're driving. You might have a backseat driver. You might have a driver who's beside you, but he's not driving. You're driving. He's telling you how to drive. You might say, I don't need a backseat driver. Now, they may not be behind you. They may not be in the back seat behind you. They might just be beside you, right next to you. But you tell them, I don't need a backseat driver. Or, for example, perhaps someone or friend is giving you some advice that you don't want. You might say, I don't need a backseat driver. In other words, I don't need this advice. I don't want to hear it. Another very common expression that is a travel idiom. Why do we say it's a travel idiom? It's because they're using some expressions or some words that are related to traveling. So at a crossroads is another common travel idiom, where it means you're at a point where an important decision or a choice needs to be made. You might say, I can't seem to make up my mind. I'm at a crossroad. Now, this could happen easily in your life when you have to make an important decision. You might be at a crossroad. And the last idiom that we're going to be talking about today is in the driver's seat. In the driver's seat means I'm in a dominant position or I'm in a controlling position. He's in the driver's seat, or I'm in the driver's seat. Let me take care of this. If your boss says to you, I'm the driver, I'm in the driver's seat, it means I'm the one that's going to make these decisions today. Well, there you have it. We went through a few English idioms. I certainly hope that you're able to use these idioms at work. And for more information, or perhaps you need some help with your English, or perhaps you might even need some help with your interviews, you can go to my website at www.lindagrobert.com, or you can send me an email at teacher@lindagrobert.com. Talk to you soon now. Bye-bye.